Guys for having me and for hosting this webinar. I think this is a very timely topic and I like how specific it is. I don't think I've ever actually done a talk just on prerequisites, so that's great. But I would love to know, I see a little bit in the chat about like first year applicant, gap year, applying to PA school this year, junior, sophomore, finishing prereqs. Okay, so we have a really good range here. And I do think that this will be helpful for everyone because what we're going to cover, some of it will be for if you're still trying to plan out your coursework, and some of it will be more applicable to when you're applying. So no matter where you're at, we'll be able to help. So, all right, let's jump in. I have a little presentation. I guess I should do an intro. I didn't put an intro slide in, but I'm Savanna Perry. I've been a dermatology PA for the last 10 years now. I work and live in Georgia. My husband is a hospitalist. We have 2 kids, so I work part-time as a derm PA now. And then 9 years ago, almost 10, I started the PA platform, which is just to help people find the PA profession and decide if it's something they want to do. And if they do want to do that, I will help them. So we have lots of resources. ACT has been great to partner with, especially with finding experience and getting training that I know can be hard to find. I think I've told you guys, but I had to drive every Saturday for 3 months to go to a CNA class. There were no virtual options for training at all. That probably like dates me. We did have computers, we did have internet, so don't worry. But I would have loved an option like this to get my MA certification, and it would have opened so many doors. So make sure y'all take advantage of that. I know they are very generous with like discounts and codes at these webinars, and if you follow along. So we also send them out in our newsletter. All right, let me screen share here and figure out the best way for me to do this. If I make this present, can we all see it? Y'all can see that?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So prerequisites, and the topic is navigating the prerequisite requirements for PA school, and that's such a great title because it's not straightforward. There's a lot of navigation here when it comes to figuring out what you need to take, when you need to take it, who it works for, all these different things. So we will go through all of that. We're going to talk about the coursework aspect, how to plan for it, and then some common pitfalls that I see working with students. If y'all have questions, please put them in the chat. Like I'll try to kind of pay attention as I go. And then afterwards, definitely we'll have some time for questions as well. Will this presentation be shared to us? I don't know. We can. I can email it afterwards if we need to. So yeah. Do y'all send an email out afterwards? I don't know if there's a way to get it to them.
Yep, you can share with me or Savannah. There's an option to also post it in the resources tab at the bottom of your page.
Okay. I don't have it like completely downloaded, like I'm just sharing from Canva, but I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let me move some things around here. So the first question that I feel like comes up is why do we have prerequisites? Like, why do we need to do this? You know, I think when we get in our little ranting phase all the time about all the stuff PA schools make us do, it's like, why do we have to do this? And so after years of doing this and talking to a lot of faculty, a lot of people who work in admissions, directors of programs, there are some reasons. And y'all can tell me if you feel like there's some, that I'm missing or if you want to add any. But the first one would be that the prerequisites are the classes that ideally will set you up for success in PA school. These are the classes that the programs, the schools have found help their students succeed. When I started PA school, we jumped straight into anatomy and physiology, and it was like nothing I'd ever done. The anatomy and physiology I had learned in first high school where I took it the first time, and then undergrad. I mean, it was so much more extensive. I always say like the structures had structures and those had structures and functions, and you have, I mean, there's just so much. And so they don't really give you a refresher. So you jump in. You're not really getting a refresher on microbiology. You've got to have that understanding to then be able to move on to things like pharmacology and all these clinical medicine classes that you'll be taking in PA school. I mentioned my husband is a doctor. He, in med school, they did actually do a good bit of that review, where they kind of took some time at the beginning to go back over some of that, and expand on it a little bit more. But in PA school, they really have expectations of you being ready to go. Like you need to show up and know your stuff. Um, and so we have these, wanting you to be ready, wanting you to make sure you can handle the courses you'll have in PA school. So while you really don't need to know organic chemistry, it's a tough class. It takes a high level of comprehension, more similar to what you will then have to figure out once you are in PA school. The other reason there are prerequisites and other requirements are that it's a way to filter applications. It weeds people out. That's the cold, hard truth of it. Schools are getting thousands and thousands of applications, and so they have to have ways to narrow it down. And by choosing their prerequisite list and making sure that it has what the schools are looking for, that's one way to do that. Okay. So why do you need to plan out your prerequisites? Why can't we just be like, oh, let me take what a biology major needs? I was a biology major. My major did not get me the prerequisites I needed for PA school. Granted, this was a while ago, but at the University of Georgia where I went, the advisor really didn't know what pre-PA students needed. I remember going to her and I said, I need to take anatomy. That was not included in my major. So number one, I couldn't get in the class because there were other majors that needed it. Nursing, kinesiology, all these other things. Number two, for me, it counted as an elective and not even a science elective. They did not consider anatomy and physiology an essential or helpful part of a biology major. So I ended up having to take it over the summer at a different institution just to check that box and get it done, which that is a very important class. So by planning things out, you need to be knowledgeable about what you need because your advisors or people helping you may not be. And I hope and pray that you have someone amazing to help you, but I know that that's not always the reality of it. So you need to know what you need. If you apply to a program and you don't check the boxes, you don't have the correct class, the grade, the credits, all of these things that you need, then your application is likely to get thrown out. The school will not look at it. That's part of that weed out process where it just may not ever get to where it needs to be. So we don't want to do that. We want to save your time, save your money, because every single year I see people who do this and they're like, why didn't I get an interview? Wasn't my application considered? I got an instant rejection. And it can be very small things and having to do with coursework that get your application taken out of the pool of applicants. And the other reason, especially for people who are in undergrad or kind of earlier in the process, that we want to consider this is by planning your prerequisites, it can allow you to perform better in them and get better grades, which then make your GPAs better and then make your application process easier. If you can spread out those difficult science classes and kind of plan what you're taking each semester, maybe that semester you're taking organic chemistry is a little bit lighter, you're taking some easier courses versus trying to also take biology too or microbiology. It's not always possible, but if you are able to do that to the best of your ability, then I'm not gonna say it's gonna be easier for you, but it might be a little less stressful. So by planning things out, you can then identify like, am I going to have to take this over the summer? Do I need to look at a different place to take this class? And it can just set you up. Whereas a lot of people get to the end when it's time to apply and be like, oh my gosh, I need to take genetics and my school doesn't offer it, or it's full, or there's not time. And then they're kind of scrambling to get those courses done. All right. So we'll go over some common questions and misconceptions and things that you may or may not know. So one question is, do all schools have the same prerequisite courses? And I didn't really define prerequisite, but prerequisite is just a class that a school says you have to have, and we'll talk more about specifics there. But unfortunately, no, not all schools have the same prereqs. They can vary greatly. They can vary in topic, in where you can take them, in how many credits, and all of these different things. So you've got to check the program websites. It should list out what exactly they want you to have so that you can start making some lists, but do not assume that all schools have the same prereqs. I'll give you an example too. So we have a medical assistant who recently decided that she wanted to go to PA school. So very new to the process, not really like hasn't really looked into it at all. And someone told her, oh, you should be a neuroscience major. And so she just like went, signed up to be a neuroscience major and started taking classes. But we were talking and I was kind of like, let's look at the major, let's see what it actually requires. And when we did that, we found that there's a lot of extra classes in that major that she wouldn't need for PA school. They do give science credits, which is good for your science GPA, but it also left out a lot of the classes that she would need for PA school. So I was like, let's maybe look at some other options and see if there's something that would be a better fit if PA's your end goal to get you those classes. So then you're not taking extra stuff and having to take other classes too. All right. So another question is, do prerequisite courses expire? And this answer is sometimes. So if we're talking about expiration dates on prerequisites, that's going to be from when you started taking them, unless a program specifies differently on their website. And that's kind of to be safe, make sure you're covered. But this is very program dependent. It also can just vary. And also keep in mind that schools can change requirements. So a school that you looked at last year or 2 years ago, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm good. Double check those websites. Keep an eye on them so that you are constantly seeing if anything is different and you can adjust your plans. So with expiration dates, the most common you'll see is 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. And schools want you to be fresh. They want the information to be current. They want to know that your efforts are current. So for sometimes this will take programs off your list if you are not wanting to repeat a course, and your prerequisite courses have expired. So just another thing to check and make sure you are covering. Let's get into some specifics with prereqs and explaining what the schools are looking for. I think my one takeaway, if there's one thing that I want you to kind of take away from today and from spending your time here, is that you need to keep a constant check on schools' requirements and try to complete them as fully as possible. And by planning ahead, you're making this entire process easier on yourself. So when you are looking at program websites, and if somebody has a specific program they're interested in that they want us to kind of like look up and look at the prereqs, you put it in the chat and we can pull it up at the end. You're going to see required prerequisites and then either preferred or recommended prerequisites. In my book, something recommended, I consider required. And that's not to say you have to do all of them because there can be extensive lists there, but if you can have as much as they recommended as possible done, that's going to make you a more appealing applicant. So start with the required. Those need to be done first with the grades that they want you to have. and then move on to recommended or preferred classes if you're trying to fill your schedule, increase your science GPA, increase your overall GPA. Those are the next classes you want to look at. And then you can move on to upper level science courses after you've done all of those if you're still working on those GPAs. So these are some lists, okay? And these are not all inclusive, comprehensive for every program. These are just in general classes that you'll see listed as either required or preferred. And when you're looking at this, you'll see that some classes are on both lists, and that's a little confusing, right? So if we look at these required classes, typically the required classes you're going to see are chemistry, either one course of it or a full year series. Biology, same thing, either one course or the full series. Organic chemistry, most schools only require the first half now. There were some when I applied that wanted both sections, but now you really only need the first half. Can you give examples of bio 1 and 2? So typically those are like your general bio, just general bio for science majors. And then we have psychology, just general psychology, microbiology, anatomy, physiology, and sometimes these can be combined. So like A&P, anatomy and physiology 1, anatomy and physiology 2. Most of the time you are going to need both of those. English and then statistics and or biostatistics. So I see a question in the chat about statistics. I took a statistics course when I studied abroad. Would that count for my prereqs? I heard that some med schools won't accept out of the country courses, but was wondering if it was different for PA schools. So that would depend on the school and how it's on your transcript. So if it was technically through your home university and it's listed on your transcript, normally with a grade, it's probably fine, especially if it's just like general statistics. If it was a special topics course, or part of an international school or program, it may not be accepted. We'll definitely get to answering that question and like looking at some examples in just a minute too. All right, on our preferred list, so I moved bio 2 over here too, because sometimes you don't need both of them. Organic chemistry 2, physics would actually be another one on this list that's not on there right now. Biochemistry. And what you may find for some programs is some of the courses are interchangeable. So you may see a program that says organic chemistry and or biochemistry. And so then you get to make a choice. So that's helpful. Abnormal psychology, developmental psychology, medical terminology, genetics, human growth and development, calculus, among others. There are definitely ones on here that I haven't listed that just you may also need. So I'm seeing some questions. Let's see here. Is sociology and or ethics a good preferred course? Sometimes they'll say that they want you to have either medical ethics or like sociology courses, and then you can kind of, fill those in with whatever. It's just going to depend on the program. What is the difference between statistics and biostatistics in real life? I don't know, but some schools will specify. I think biostatistics more like medical or health related, like public health. I'm not sure. Okay, we'll talk about AP credits in just a minute. Is it okay to have an in-progress class and apply early? We'll also talk about that in just a minute. Oh, great questions. Okay, so let's get to this one. When do prerequisites need to be completed? So you're going to find these different specifications and the programs should list these out on their websites. So some will say at the time of application. So when you submit your application at that time, those classes need to be on your transcripts with a grade complete. They may say at a specific date or semester. So they may say you need to have them done by December of 2025. And then you can, make sure they're completed by then, send an updated transcript, good to go. Or they may say at time of matriculation. And that would be like right before you start school. So before you can start the program, they need to be done. On our podcast, the Pre-PA Club podcast, we did an episode with someone who went from being a teacher to PA school, and he was accepted on the condition that he finished organic chemistry 1 and had a grade. So he applied, was accepted, wasn't really like expecting to get accepted yet. And so he had to finish organic in 3 weeks. So he did an online course, they accepted online classes, and he just powered through to get that done by the time he started school. So it can vary. I do not recommend that at all. Like, please don't do that. But if you get in a jam, there are options. So going off this question, is it okay to have in-progress classes and apply early in April and May, or is it better to apply when you're done fully, which would be, I would be done by June? In that case, I would say June. A more complete application is typically better. There are a lot of gray factors here. So when I'm working with students, when we're kind of counseling students, these are the things we're looking at. For you, what are your GPAs like? Would it be better for you to have those grades completed with good grades? Or is it going to be better, like if you think you may not do as well in them, to go ahead and submit with a higher GPA and then add those classes because they're not going to recalculate GPAs later? And where are you applying? Are the places you're applying, are they ones that want you to have more stuff done? Do they accept in progress? What do their requirements look like? There's so many things that go into that. Okay, so when we're looking at a program website and we're trying to figure out, what prerequisite do they want? Does what I have meet the requirement? This is kind of your checklist for determining that. So what is the course? Does it fulfill what they want? Do not assume that something fulfills it. If you have any doubt, any question, ask the program. Get some clarification. I'm going to say that probably 5 more times while we're here, but ask the program, because I've seen so many times every single year assumptions that are made about classes filling prereqs and then they don't, and it gets people into trouble. Do you need a lab with that class? So labs sometimes are specified with an extra credit. Sometimes they're just kind of rolled into the class, but the schools can tell by how many credits there. How many credits do they want it to be? Is the microbiology requirement 3 credits or 4 credits? Most program websites will list the requirements in semester hours. So if you're on the quarter system, you have to translate those hours into semester hours to make sure you're meeting the requirements. And then is there an expiration on those courses and on those hours? Are you going to have to retake anything? And then also, what grade do you need? Do they require a certain grade? Like, do they want a C or higher, B minus or higher? What grade do they want? And do you have it? I didn't put that on here. What if we took a lab online? So again, depends on the program, and we'll talk about online classes a little bit, whether or not they'll accept that. It's just program dependent, like everything else. So let's talk about some prerequisite pitfalls. One I probably see the most is that a course doesn't fill a school's requirement. And this can come down to either assuming, not looking correctly, not really knowing like what you took, if it filled it or not. Biostats is a common one. People will assume that biostats will be accepted for statistics, and it is not always. Same for if somebody wants a general psychology requirement, you can't just sub an abnormal psych class and assume that they'll accept it. It just won't work. So depending on what your classes are, this is, something that you want to look at ahead of time. When you are applying in CASPA, some programs will have you assign courses to prereqs. Not all programs, but there are some that you'll have an opportunity to say like, okay, this is what I'm considering fitting my biology 1 requirement or my microbiology requirement, because sometimes schools will give classes funny names and it may not look like it fits. So in those cases, again, it's good to reach out to the program, ask them. Sometimes they'll want a syllabus or some type of, outline of the class, description of the class, so that they can clarify that it's correct. But we want to make sure that those classes are exactly what the school wants. Okay, the next one is the amount of credits doesn't fill a school's requirement. So if your quarter credits are not enough when translated to semester credits, or if lab was not included, that could be an issue with the credits. A normal class is going to be 3 credits. A class with a lab is typically going to be 4. There can be some variation there depending on program as well. And again, ask the programs. I would also say just read the fine print on program websites. We also had a medical assistant who is now in PA school, but she had applied to a school and they reached out and she had gone to a school that was on the quarter system. So she had taken 2 quarters of biochemistry, which is equivalent to a semester typically. But at her school, they actually offered like the whole biochem series was 3 quarters. And their website specified for coursework that if another section was offered, you had to have the complete series. So that school basically told her, like, you're going to have to go back and take that 3rd quarter of biochem, which she didn't even live there anymore, or retake biochem for it to be accepted here. So unfortunately for her, that took that off the list because she was like, I'm not going to retake that. So those are the little things that you have to look at just to make sure there's not any discrepancies. I am taking an online bio 2 pathophysiology, but this is not considered bio 2 for all programs. Yeah, so some schools, like that may not be considered a general biology class. You would definitely want to check and ask. And then somebody mentioned earlier about AP credits. This is another one that gets people into trouble, and that same MA. I'll tell you another story. A lot of PA schools will not accept AP credits for prerequisite courses. They want to see a grade. This also goes for pass fail outside of like 2020, 2021 eras. Most prerequisite courses, they want a grade. So check the websites, see if AP credit can fulfill a prereq. If it doesn't, you have to take that class. And this is where a lot of people in high school don't even know that they want to go to PA school. Like they don't even know that's on their radar. And so they're thinking like, oh, I'm getting ahead, I'm taking these classes. And then they end up not being accepted. So the ones like English, history, all of those don't really matter. Typically those are fine. But if it is a science course that is a required prereq, usually they want to see that grade. The other issue here is if your AP credit is not specified on your transcript, so even if they accept it, but it does not specifically say like AP bio, whatever, then it will also not be accepted. So that's the issue that same medical assistant got into in our office. She had taken AP Psych. And some schools that she was applying to would accept that, but on her transcripts, it just grouped all of her AP credits together and basically said like AP credit, 9 hours or whatever. And it didn't say which classes. And so the schools weren't accepting her psychology, and she did end up having to retake that class. So they're nitpicky. They're like super picky. I hear my baby. But always ask the program if there's any question. So, okay. Let's see, I saw some questions. Is COVID an exception if you had a pass fail grade? Some schools did make that exception. It'll be like every cycle we're kind of like, what's going to happen? Are they going to still accept it? But some of them would say like for spring 2020, fall 2021 semesters, or have very specific kind of parameters around that. Yeah, I agree. Do the same exceptions that apply for AP credits happen for dual credits? So for dual credits, you should be able to get a transcript from that institution if you got a grade there. So you would just submit that as like your first freshman semester, and you would include those classes, they'd be in your GPAs. So those are typically fine. All right. So we've talked through a few of these, but here are some considerations. Online versus in person, you definitely want to check and see if online classes are accepted before you sign up. Not all schools will accept online prereqs. Community colleges. Again, most programs are perfectly fine with community college classes. They understand that that fits your schedule better, that you're working hard, you have other stuff going on, and so you may not be able or have access to a large university or a local university. So, if you can take it at a university, I think that's fine. I would probably say schools would prefer like university, then community college, then online, if we were ranking them. That's my personal opinion, not any programs, but and then retaking prereqs. So if you end up having to retake a class, let's say you take chemistry, you get a C, you're like, oh no, I need a B plus. You retake it. Every class that you take, every attempt will end up on your application. Most programs are going to look at that best attempt, that most recent, that last attempt, and take that grade. So while they see, oh, you struggled, but then you did better, when they're looking for certain grades, if they're looking for a required grade, usually they're looking at that second most recent grade, or third. But schools will have all these different requirements, and you can always kind of like double check the website, call them, reach out to them. They'll have info sessions. They are there to help you. A couple of questions. Let me see here. Oh, let's see. Where'd it go? If your community college summer classes are posted on your official university transcript, is that fine? Or do you have to submit another transcript directly from the college? Every transcript has to come from the original institution where you took the class. So it would need to come from the community college. No, anything that's on a transcript as a transfer like won't count, and it can hold up your application. So you want the transcript from the original place where you took that class. As a previous uni graduate, I ended up going back to the same school to take my prereqs, but it's so expensive. But I'm scared of switching over to college as some schools want uni courses. I mean, unless yours like specifically says like we want university classes, we don't accept community college, which there are not many. Do what fits best for your schedule, your wallet. Like yeah, I don't feel like you have to take them there, especially if it's a retake. Okay. From the perspective of someone who didn't start thinking about PA school until after graduating from college, do you have any advice on the best way to properly review prereq materials to be more prepared for PA school? It's hard to prepare before PA school. My advice is to, once you're accepted, reach out to the class above you and ask if they have any advice, if they use any resources, if, every school starts a little bit differently. We start with anatomy and physiology. If there's a subject or something that you can review that they think would be helpful. And then like there are a few resources out there, like Rosh Review, I think has one where, or not Rosh anymore, their Blueprint. That's like a Q bank or like didactic stuff. I just don't know how much it would actually help, to be honest. Like it's so hard to prepare ahead of time. Okay. Is there a specific resource that we can use to determine which classes really count towards our science GPA? Yes. So with prerequisite courses or with all courses, the CASPA FAQ has a list of science versus non-science courses, and it goes by the title of the course first, not the subject. I have a YouTube video on that. If you just kind of like Google the PA platform assigning courses or something, it'll come up. But you go off of that list, and that'll help you kind of determine if you're picking classes where they're going to fall. Okay, and then here I'm going to share some resources, and y'all, yes, send any questions in the chat. Like I said, if anyone wants us to look at specifics, happy to do that. So Mapped is a free application tracker, and it has a GPA calculator. It has program information. We're adding more to it all the time. But depending on where you're at in the cycle, this is a great resource just to keep up with everything. You can kind of chat with advisors. You can put your experiences in there. You can see everything. You can see your prereqs and kind of use it as you go. Lauren, thank you. I've been using Map for a year, and it's a lifesaver. Yeah, so it's just something I think to like check in with, to kind of keep you on track. I know it's hard, and I'm like a pen and paper girl, but I also lose my list like all the time. So if you're kind of like drowning in spreadsheets right now, you probably want to check out Mapped, which ACT has also supported fantastically and helped with our conferences and everything. If you are applying in this upcoming cycle, we have Pre-PA Academy. If you're applying in the future, this would not be for you yet. But Pre-PA Academy is group coaching that we have sessions 3 to 4 times a week through the entire process. So we talk about everything. Right now we're heavy on essays, getting into like personal statements, experience details, and then we will walk you through CASPA and then get into the mock interviews in the fall to help you prepare for that. But there's a lot of accountability, a lot of support. We started last year and it was fantastic. So would love to have y'all join us for this cohort if you are in the application cycle. Yeah, I was like, Lauren, is that you from Academy actually? Um, so it's $2.99, but you can use the code SAVE100 and they'll take $100 off. Okay, and then we have one-on-one counseling. Yeah, so Academy is if you are applying in this cycle, like we help you get everything ready to go. Like we kind of go through the whole thing together. But yes, it will be for people in this like upcoming April, opening in April application cycle. And then we have counseling. So if you want some one-on-one help, want somebody to sit down with you, look at your prereqs, look at your plan, look at your application, that's what this is for. And we're happy to help. We also just have a ton of like YouTube videos and podcasts, social media stuff. Like we're just always talking about PA things. So if you want our emails so that you find out about fun stuff and you get your ACT email, you can sign up here. And feel free to reach out to me either on social. Emails probably better, honestly. Like Instagram DMs get a little crazy. But if you have questions, reach out. We have a Facebook group as well. So yeah. All right. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna download this to see if I can put it into resources real quick. But if anyone has questions that we didn't cover.
In the Q&A, Savannah, I don't know if you have
Okay.
access.
Let me see. I did this one. How many PA schools should you apply to? That's another gray question of it's going to vary based a lot on your priorities. So what are you looking for in a program? How many programs can you find that fit exactly what you want? And then also, can you move? Can you go other places? Like how big of a net do you want to cast? That kind of thing. There's research, there's data that shows that it wasn't the most recent. I need to see if they've published new ones, but people who were accepted to PA school in the 2021 cycle, on average applied to 6 programs. So there's more, there's less, but generally like they've done research and found that if you apply to more than 12, it does not increase your chances of getting accepted to PA school. So my recommendation is typically around 10. Like if you want to cast a wide net, you want to put yourself out there, see if you can find 10. But if that's overwhelming, if that's too much and you can't find that many, then make sure they're actually a good fit that you want to go to before you apply. There we go. What's a competitive GRE score? Did that work? I don't really know what that did. Okay. Did it put it up here? Okay. A competitive GRE score, generally I say shoot for greater than 150 in each section and greater than the 50th percentile. Schools use the GRE very differently. Some schools care, some schools don't, some just require it because they have to, but we want to get as good as you can. But generally, if you hit that 300 mark, hit the 50th percentile, you're doing okay. Okay, let's see. How many prereq classes do you recommend to take per semester if I'm planning to be a full-time student and want to be done ASAP? Which class is harder or easier? Oh, wow, that's a hard question. It's been a long time for me, so people in the chat might want to answer, but For me, I found chemistry extremely hard. It was just something I couldn't really wrap my mind around. And so I think looking back, I wish I had planned that out better. I think I put the presentation in the resources if y'all want it, but I just, I think I was taking like Chem 1 and Bio 1 at the same time, and that was a lot. So then I ended up moving Bio 2 from the next semester to the summer so that I wouldn't take those at the same time. So it's definitely person specific and school specific too. Like you may want to find out at your school, like what are the difficult classes? What do people struggle with? But I think the more that you can spread out those harder sciences, the better. On the flip side, like I really enjoyed microbiology, so that wasn't as hard for me. I enjoyed genetics. But yeah, chemistry and physics were just not my thing. And so those I really had to make sure I wasn't taking too much at one time. Um, okay. I did take the GRE, but it was like, I don't know, what year was that? 2008? 2000, no, 2012. I took it in 2012. Um, I don't have all of the past syllabi saved for the courses I've taken at my university. Could that be a problem when applying? Most of the time, you're not going to need them, but if you do, a lot of times you can find them just by Googling, like either through the what do they call that? The list of all the courses, like the handbook with all of them. Sometimes you can find them there. Sometimes they'll just be listed online. Sometimes they'll be on that like Rate My Professor site. So sometimes you can find them. Or if you get really desperate, you may have to reach back out to the professors or the school to try to find it. I've even seen in our pre-PA Club Facebook group, people be like, hey, has anyone taken this with so-and-so? Do you have the syllabus? And then you can find it there too. Okay, is it better to select the programs and then take any additional prereqs you may need? I have a limited budget. Yes, so yes. So if we're talking timeline, I would start with figuring out which programs are on your list, like make a big list, and then start looking at them and seeing what they actually require. So that medical assistant in our office, like what she found was there were a couple of schools on her list that wanted one specific class. And when it came down to it, she was like, I just don't think it's worth the money for me to take this one class for this one program. And so you have to make some of those decisions. I think she ended up taking genetics because it worked for a couple schools that were higher on her list. And so you can prioritize that a little bit. One thing we're adding to Mapped, which isn't in there yet, is it will show you a percentage and kind of match you to schools based on your prereqs. So there's gonna be a lot of filtering options. I actually have to approve it tonight. There's gonna be a lot of filtering options. I'm approving those, and then we're adding the prereqs where you'll be able to see like, oh, I have 85% done for this school, but I have 90% done for this school, and kind of gauge where you're at. Oh, would you suggest taking the GRE? I was considering only applying to schools with no GRE. That's an interesting question. So I have a theory on this. This is completely unfounded and just my own theory. But I think if you look at it from a numbers perspective, I talked about this. I don't know if Lauren, you were there at the academy session because we just did one on standardized tests. But if you have school A that does not, or that does require the GRE, you're going to get 1,000 people apply who took the GRE. If you have school B that does not require the GRE, you're going to have 1,000 people apply who did not take the GRE, but then you're going to have 1,000 people apply, those same ones from school A who did take the GRE. So the more specific the requirements are for a program, the higher your chances of being looked at. So even ones that require the PA CAT or have more prerequisites, the ones that do have those few random ones, if you can check those off, like one has 5 check boxes versus 15, if you can check all 15, you're going to have a higher chance of being considered just because there's going to be less applicants. I don't know if that's confusing without like a visual. All right, when should you apply to be competitive? So the applications open end of April. if you can have your application in by end of May, early June, I consider that competitive. A lot of schools do rolling admissions. So when your application is submitted, they are looking at it. They're seeing if you meet the requirements, if you're competitive, and if you are, then they'll look at you for an interview. All right, I might be getting kicked off, but um, if you make sure y'all check out ACT's upcoming webinars, we have the link in there. I think y'all should get maybe emails with those as well. And big thank you to them for just supporting you guys so well. They don't have to put on events like this and webinars, but I think they do a really good job planning those out. Oh, good question. So will a majority of PA programs show up on CASPA when April or May hits? Currently, there are only 17 programs opened as a program. Yes. So as the applications open, they'll get added back into CASPA. Right now, you can only see people who have open applications. Like the program I went to, Augusta University, they don't open theirs till July. So even in April, you won't see it. But then in July, when it opens up, you will. Do PA schools try and consider more challenging undergraduate institutions with regards to GPA? That's a good question, and I think it depends on the program. And they may or may not tell you that or publicize it. But they're going to look at everything. They may also look at, this person went to a harder or more prestigious university, but this person went to community college and they were working and volunteering at the same time. So there's a lot of aspects there. And it can be hard to kind of tease those out. If you can go to info sessions, I think that's a good place to kind of ask about that and get opinions and see what they think. Do science classes you take at a community college affect your science GPA or only cumulative? They affect both. So anywhere you take it, science classes will affect both your science GPA and your overall GPA. I was talking about the filtering in map.com, the free application tracker. Is it worth retaking a class if you got a B- to get a B? For example, Bio 1, even if you have an A- for Bio 2. It depends on what the school requires. So if they say C or higher and you got a B- and then you did better and you got an A-, I'd probably be like, don't prioritize that right now. If you had a C, I'd probably say retake that. I really like to try to encourage people to have B or higher in prereqs. And that includes B-, but like B or higher for prereqs, I think puts you in a good place. Thank you, Deidre. Okay. Do PA schools try and consider more? Oh, I already answered that one. If you aren't competitive for a GRE score, would you still consider applying? GRE is so tough. I would look at a couple things. If a school has published accepted averages on their website, look at that. Especially if it includes GRE, just to see where you stand. Because you may look and be like, oh, I'm kind of like the average was 302 and I'm a 300. Like that's pretty close. I'm gonna apply anyway. I meet the minimums. But if you look at a program website, this is one thing that frustrates me about this process. A school will say that their minimum GPA is 2.75 or 3, or that they don't have one. And then when you look at their averages of accepted students, the overall GPA is a 3.75. So that tells you that even though that school doesn't have a minimum, they are looking for a higher GPA. Is there an off chance where they would accept someone with a lower GPA with like a crazy unique application? Maybe. And I think they're just leaving themselves open to that. But generally, that tells you that they want somebody, they're looking more at grades. On the flip side, you may see a school that has a lower GPA listed and higher hours. And I have some people who want to go to a certain program that I know prioritizes experience and time and is looking for a more mature applicant. And so not to say that they shouldn't apply or they shouldn't look at it, but I can kind of say like, you only have 1,000 hours. Typically this program wants someone who's been working for a while. So apply, but it just may not be the best fit. They may not go for that. Let me pull back up the Q&A. Answer that one. Oh, okay. So they do come into the chat too. Cool. Since I'm applying in early May, I imagine I'd make a CASPA account at the end of April and do my application. When do I send my transcripts to CASPA? Great question. So, and then I'm also wondering, even if I took one class and transferred it to my main college, I need to send a transcript from that school to all the programs I applied to. So you'll send your transcripts to CASPA, and then they will distribute them to the schools. But yes, you need original transcripts from every program or every school that you went to that you took college level classes at. That needs to go to CASPA. And then you can make a CASPA account at any time. Like you can make one now and then just roll it over when you open it in April, like even if you don't put anything in there right now. But I would, if you are done with coursework and you're not waiting on any grades, you can send your transcripts as soon as CASPA opens. I would not necessarily send them right now because CASPA is about to go into a closing time, and they could kind of get lost in the abyss. So I would wait at this point until CASPA opens. As long as you're not taking any classes, you could send them. If you have spring classes in progress that you want included on your, or you want the grade on your transcript and you want the grades included in your GPA calculations on CASPA, you need to wait until those transcripts are finalized at the end of the semester for them to be considered. If you send them too early and you submit your application, those courses won't be verified. And if you send them later, they do not do it again. They do one verification the first time you submit. So if you're waiting on summer class grades to raise your GPA, do not submit anywhere before you finish those classes. You need to wait to get everything in that you want included for that first verification and GPA calculation. I feel like that's a lot, but that's how it works. Go. Oh, hold on. I'm a non-traditional student and have transcripts over several decades. I completed undergrad in 2019 and my GPA for prereqs is 3.85 for most programs. CASPA GPA is 3.32. Those are fine. I mean, they're over minimums. I consider you a competitive applicant. When do they reopen? The end of April. And I don't know if CASPA has announced a date for 25. They probably should have. I just haven't heard it. April 24th, which is early. I heard someone say something later, so I'm glad that was wrong. But yeah, CASPA will open for this cycle on April 24th. So we're not that far out. That's crazy. But if y'all need help, I'm here to help. Thank y'all for asking really good questions. And thank you again to ACT for hosting. Hopefully this was helpful. Let us know if there's other subjects or topics that y'all would want to hear about. We can definitely, do what we've done. What did we do in the past? We did some interview ones last year. I think we did another one. Did we do one about choosing schools? I think we did one about like school choices too. So how long does it take for schools to get back to you for an interview? That's a great question. Some will do it like the next day and some will take months and some will just ghost you and never answer, unfortunately. So, all right. Talk about the biology. I don't know. I don't think you want me to talk about biology. Would you say it's hard? I liked biology. I didn't think biology was that hard, but again, that was many, many, many years ago. All right, Janie, do you want to wrap up anything you want to add or people need to do for us?
No, this was great. Thank you so much, Savannah. You've been very supportive and helpful, and I hope you all found the information incredibly informative. As always, we do have a series of webinars coming up this month, so feel free to click on the link I shared in the chat. And if you are new to ACT and interested in enrolling in any of our certification programs, we are offering $400 off with code webinar 400. Again, that's webinar 400 at checkout for $400 off. With that, I'd like to say thank you, Savannah, and thank you to everyone who joined, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Bye.